I just want to start with a gag order because I think we're all waiting to see what happens here. Jack Smith has asked for it to be reinstated. Judge Chutkan to reinstate the partial gag order. When do we expect this to happen, and do you expect that to happen?
So it has been a cray-cray week in Donald Trump legal developments.
You're absolutely a legal term there.
Yes,
cray-cray.
That's the technical legal term. And look, there's two different gag orders. One, Trump has already violated, the one in New York State, in which he's been fined now twice. And then there's this one you're talking about at the federal level with Jack Smith. And that one has been put on pause. And I think Donald Trump has made the best case of anyone. He's witness A for why you need the gag order in effect, because the moment that gag order was put on pause, he started going and attacking people left and right. And so I think that there's no doubt in my mind that there will be a gag order imposed on Donald Trump. And there's also no doubt in my mind that he's going to violate it repeatedly, to the point where a judge is going to have to confront the ultimate question: are we going to put the former president in jail? And I think there's only one answer to that.
Well, what is your answer?
Which is you have to. I mean, if he continues this behavior, no other litigant in this country would ever be able to do what he's doing. And judges, I don't care what your politics are, the one thing you understand is if you put on that robe is it's about the legitimacy of the court and about the judicial process.
So, Andrew, Neil mentioned the New York case. In the New York civil fraud case, Trump was fined $10,000 this week for violating that gag order. The judge previously did threaten jail time, which Neil seems to think should be a part of this. Ivanka, his children are supposed to testify this week. What are you anticipating is going to happen here? And is there anything between fines and jail as the judge is considering options?
Well, I really agree with Neil, and I actually am very concerned that the $10,000 fine, which is the second fine, he was already fined $5,000 for the first violation, sends exactly the wrong message, because Donald Trump, as you know, Jen, is really good at power dynamics and getting a signal of what he can get away with and what lines people are willing to draw. So I think $10,000 in some ways is sending the wrong incentive. You really need to do something that is going to cause him to adhere to the judge's rules. And remember, what the judges are concerned about is rhetoric that will lead to violence. All you have to do is look at the January 6th riots to know that there is that concern. But there obviously are also concerns because you have somebody who has actually been charged with threatening Judge Chutkan and is under arrest for that. So I am concerned that with his children testifying this week, with that civil case really going to his brand as a alleged billionaire, with it really possibly leading to his not being able to do any business in New York State whatsoever, that he will continue to act out. And I agree with Neil that judges are going to need to really stiffen their spines because they have to worry about the violence that can come from the call and response that the former president is wielding.
This week was so full. It was cray-cray, as you said, just to quote you. Mark Meadows news, and Mark Meadows, ABC is reporting that Mark about that. How big of a deal is it that Meadows reportedly told investigators he did not believe the election was stolen and that Trump was being dishonest? I mean, that's Meadows' view, right? It's not reflecting Trump. How big of a deal is that in the court?
It's quite a big deal. So basically, Mark Meadows is President Trump's former chief of staff. So the person in the room
there for everything.
There for everything. And for the prosecutor, Jack Smith, or for Fani Willis to show that a crime has been committed for Trump, you have to have a bad act and you have to have bad criminal intent. Meadows is important to both. Trump's best defense, you've heard it over and over again, is, look, I legitimately thought I won the election. Now, those of us on Earth, too, understand that that's not even possible. But nonetheless, that's going to be his argument. Meadows, evidently, according to ABC News, told the prosecutors, nope, Trump himself didn't think he won the election. And that's what Cassidy Hutchinson had testified before to the January 6th committee.
Interesting, very consistent with some of what we've heard from other people. So before I let you two go, I mean, every week there seems to be a new person kind of folding here in the Georgia case. I want to ask you, Andrew, as you're watching this unfold, Jenna Ellis was this last week, which you've said was a big deal. Why is that such a big deal, and who do you think might be next?
Well, just remember, Jenna Ellis has a really different agreement. She agreed to, quote, fully cooperate, unquote, which was different than Chesbrough or Powell, who pleaded just days before her. And what she pled to was aiding and abetting false statements made by Rudy Giuliani. So for Rudy Giuliani, this is really a very bad development. So, he is facing continued civil liability in connection with a DC case against him. He is facing significant criminal liability, and he certainly, as a former DOJ official, knows exactly what's coming and also his off-ramp if he were to cooperate. So I think that is the thing that I'm sort of very much focused on. But obviously the Mark Meadows piece, if the reporting is true, is a huge development with respect to Donald Trump's liability.
Neil, real quick, who do you think is the next to fold here?
So I agree with Andrew. I think it's Rudy Giuliani is the target. The thing to watch just in the next week is not someone who's going to fold, but Ivanka Trump testifying against her husband, against her father, compelled by the court. And basically, it's the old legal adage, those families who commit crime together testify together.